Some cars make headlines, others vanish like they were never built at all. These aren't just rare models, they're mysterious machines that appeared briefly in tiny numbers or as strange prototypes and then disappeared without a trace. No one talks about them. Most were never advertised, and some were so secretive or short-lived they feel like urban legends on four wheels. Here are 12 mysterious American cars that slipped through the cracks of history and vanished before the world ever really noticed.
Imagine standing at the edge of Pontiac's engineering garage in early 1972, where something monstrous rumbled behind closed doors. Not meant for public eyes, not meant for production. Just one car, one experiment, one chance to push the envelope before it was too late. What you're about to hear is not from a brochure. It's not from a press release. It's a ghost story whispered by insiders, technicians, and engineers who were there. The tale of the 1972 Pontiac Firebird 455 HO Ram Air V, a one-of-zero test mule that almost never happened. At the time, Pontiac was in a war, a horsepower war, a reputation war, a fight to keep its edge as insurance premiums climbed and government regulators tightened the noose on performance cars. The GTO was aging, emissions were strangling creativity, and the Firebird was Pontiac's last real hope to throw a middle finger at mediocrity. And buried deep in Pontiac's engine development program was a weapon most people never knew about: the Ram Air V. Unlike its better-known predecessors, the Ram Air 3 and R4, the Ram Air V wasn't a street-friendly engine. It was a drag-strip demon disguised as a factory power plant. It had tunnel port heads for maximum airflow at high RPMs, solid lifters, staggered valve spacing, a radical cam profile, race-spec internals, and an intake manifold that looked like it belonged on a spaceship. This wasn't something you bolted into a grocery getter. It was never meant for the masses. It was Pontiac's shot at making a factory engine that could hold its own against pure race builds. Officially, the Ram Air 5 never made it into production cars. But then there's the mule. According to whispers from former engineers and one cryptic internal memo unearthed by Pontiac historians, at least one 1972 Firebird 455 HO was fitted with a Ram Air 5 engine as a rolling test bed. The purpose? Real-world data. The engine was just too wild to evaluate on a stand. They needed road miles, high-speed laps, heat cycles, a full-body workout for Pontiac's most unhinged experiment. The car itself was unassuming, a plain white or maybe silver Firebird with factory suspension and a reinforced rear subframe. But under the hood, it was a different animal. That Ram Air 455, running through a heavily reworked M22 Rock Crusher 4-speed, produced well over 3,500 horsepower on pump gas. It also required special baffling, high-capacity cooling, and race-grade brake upgrades to handle the abuse. Dyno sheets showed staggering torque curves, with peak pull happening deep into the redline. The engine had no manners. It was not smooth, and it didn't idle. It barked, it shook, it roared like it was trying to break the car it lived in, and it almost did. During one high-speed test session, possibly at GM's Milford Proving Grounds, the mule reportedly shattered its rear differential on a full-throttle launch. The car launched hard, twisted violently, and came down with enough force to snap axle mounts. The rear end was toast. The test was over. Shortly after, the Firebird mule was dismantled. Quietly. No press photos, no VIN records. Just a few internal memos, a scattered dyno chart buried in a development binder, and one faded black and white photograph taken in the corner of the test garage. A Firebird parked at an odd angle, hoods unlatched, engine mostly obscured, but just enough visible to make any Pontiac fan's heart race. The Ram Air 5 was shelved soon after. Emissions were tightening. Insurance premiums made 500 horsepower streetcars corporate poison. GM was pivoting to economy and comfort. The last of Pontiac's true racing heart was boxed up and locked away. To this day, Pontiac has never officially acknowledged the 455 HO Ram Air 5 Firebird mule. There are no VINs, no build sheets, no registry entries. Just rumors. and one photo reportedly smuggled out by a janitor who saw what he called the loudest damn thing I ever heard idle. The engine block, if it survived, is probably sitting in a crate somewhere, its serial number ground off. And that's what makes the 1972 Pontiac Firebird 455 HO Ram Air V one of the greatest phantom legends in American muscle car history. It was a glimpse into the future Pontiac wanted, a last stab of defiance before the curtain closed. One car, one engine, one moment, then gone. No brochures, no press runs, just fire, noise, and a memory that refuses to die. Picture this. It's late 1982, and in a dimly lit Dodge workshop somewhere in Michigan, engineers are quietly assembling what might have been the last gasp of Mopar's racing soul. On the surface, it looked like just another luxury-leaning personal coupe, square, chrome-lipped, unassuming. But under that vinyl top and behind those sealed beam headlights, something very strange was happening. It was called the 1983 Dodge Mirada Magnum RT. And it was Dodge's secret ticket back to NASCAR glory, a homologation special that never saw daylight. Back in the day, NASCAR still played by the old rules. If you wanted to race it, you had to build it. At least 500 production examples had to be made for the street. This was the heart of the homologation era, the same logic that gave us Daytona Superbirds and Boss 429 Mustangs. Dodge, after years of absence and dwindling performance credibility, wanted back in. And the car they chose? Not the Charger, not the Diplomat, but the Mirada. An oddball, mid-size, rear-drive coupe riding on Chrysler's aging J platform. It was a strange choice, but that's exactly what made it perfect. The project was hush-hush, internally dubbed Magnum RT. Advertised. It was supposed to be a stripped-down, big-lunged beast wearing a suit. The plan called for a reworked 360 cubic inch LA small block, tuned for high-output RT specs, hotter cam, larger valves, revised intake, and true dual exhaust. It would be paired to a heavy-duty torque flight automatic and a Dana 60 rear axle, with rear disc brakes, reinforced frame mounts, and a high-flow cooling package lifted from Mopar's fleet police cars. The exterior got a subtle chin spoiler and NASCAR-style ducktail wing. Functional pieces tested in the wind tunnel, not just cosmetic flash. Inside, the Luxo barge interior was gutted. No plush seats, no shag carpet, no opera windows. Just buckets, a tachometer, and a serious roll cage if you were lucky enough to be behind the wheel of one of the 3 known test cars. Yes, only 3 were built. All for NASCAR shakedowns. 2 were sent directly to Petty Enterprises for evaluation. The 3rd stayed at Dodge for internal testing. Richard Petty, the king himself, reportedly tested one at an early Daytona session in January 1983. He didn't say much, but what he did say stuck. It's promising. It's got legs. That was Petty speak for, this thing might just work. But then, in a brutal turn of corporate fate, Dodge pulled the plug. January 1983, just weeks before the NASCAR season kicked off, Chrysler's new leadership, deep in financial chaos and wounded by poor sales and shrinking budgets, axed all remaining factory racing support. The Mirada RT program was immediately shuttered. Technically, without the production cars, it couldn't be raced anyway. The homologation deadline came and went. NASCAR moved on. So did Petty, who famously defected to Chevrolet shortly after. The test cars, they vanished. Dodge issued no press releases. There were no photos, no brochures. It was like the whole program never happened. But Mopar insiders tell a different story. One of the test Miradas, possibly the same one Petty drove, was spotted years later in Georgia, wearing faded Chrysler fleet plates and a matte black hood. A private collector is rumored to have it, fully intact, still with its roll cage, stripped interior, and an engine block hand-stamped with an RT experimental code. No one has confirmed this, and attempts to find it always hit dead ends. Dodge has never acknowledged the car's existence, not in PR, not in historical documentation, not even in whispered interviews. And so the 1983 Dodge Mirada Magnum RT remains one of the strangest what-ifs in muscle car and NASCAR history. It was a car out of time, a 1970s chassis retrofitted for 1980s speed, built to satisfy NASCAR's archaic homologation laws just as those laws were fading. It was too late to matter, and too rare to be remembered. But for a brief, fleeting moment, Dodge nearly built a factory race car that wore a luxury car's skin. And somewhere out there, in a barn or a climate-controlled vault, there may still be one last Mirada waiting, a car built for war, silenced by bureaucracy, and buried under 3 decades of denial. Imagine a world where your 19-foot-long, opera-windowed American land yacht could whisper down the highway at 30 miles per gallon, sipping diesel like a Parisian taxicab. Sound like fiction? In 1977, deep in the bowels of Ford's engineering division, it was almost real. This is the strange, buried story of the Bosch 1977 Lincoln Continental Mark IV diesel, a car that officially never existed, powered by a French engine Americans never saw, built to answer a question no one was asking, yet. At the time, America was barely recovering from the 1973 oil crisis. Gas prices were high, regulations were tightening, and even the big three were starting to get spooked by the growing efficiency demands. But the diesel revolution hadn't arrived yet, at least not on U.S. shores. Ford of Europe, however, had been tinkering with small-displacement diesel engines for years, mostly for commercial vans and oddball sedans. One of their suppliers? Peugeot. That's right. In a rare moment of transatlantic cooperation, Ford took a European market Peugeot V8 diesel engine and stuffed it into the engine bay of their most decadent, heaviest American car, the Lincoln Mark V. The result was a grotesque marvel. On the outside, it looked like every other 1977 Mark V, long hood, crushed velvet roofline, exposed headlights, and enough chrome to blind a satellite. But under that massive hood was no 460 V8, no smog-choked 400 Cleveland. Instead, it was a Peugeot-built diesel V8, retrofitted with all sorts of arcane plumbing, filters, and adapters. It was mounted to a heavily revised C6 automatic with dual batteries, a high-torque starter, and a dashboard warning light that bluntly read, "Diesel fuel only." To accommodate the cold start requirements, engineers even wired in a custom glow plug controller, tucked beneath the dash behind a fake wood panel. How did it drive? According to the few engineers who allegedly tested the car at Ford's Romeo Proving Grounds in Michigan, the diesel Mark V was surreal. It was quiet, bordering on ghostly, with almost no vibration thanks to extra sound deadening and rubber-mounted subframes. Once warmed up, the car could cruise at 65 mph on flat ground, effortlessly, with a reported highway fuel economy of over 30 miles per gallon. A stunning figure for a 4,700-pound luxury cruiser. But acceleration was glacial. 0 to 60 was a coffee break. Uphill grades were described as hopeful, and the engine, designed for European sedans, not Detroit steel, was reportedly coughing blood by the end of the test cycle. But it wasn't just power that doomed the project. The Peugeot diesel had trouble meeting American emissions standards, even under the lax pre-1980s regulations. It also suffered from reliability issues when mated to the heavier load demands of the Mark V. Oil pressure fluctuated, injector pumps failed under sustained throttle, and one prototype suffered a catastrophic cooling failure after a day of hot weather testing in Arizona. On top of that, Ford executives were uneasy about branding one of their highest-profile domestic cars with a foreign-built engine, especially one from Peugeot, whose name meant almost nothing in the U.S. market at the time. And so the plug was quietly pulled. There was no press release, no what could have been marketing brochure, just internal memos, quickly shredded. The test car, now a curiosity that nobody wanted to claim, was reportedly stored in a back corner of a Ford warehouse for several years before it simply vanished. Some believe it was crushed. Others say it may have been stripped of its drivetrain and converted back to a regular Mark V before being auctioned off to an unsuspecting buyer. To this day, no photos of the prototype have surfaced publicly. The only clues come from anecdotal testimony and one obscure line in a 1978 Ford internal fuel economy report that references Mark V diesel testbed, EU V8 variant. But the idea didn't die. A few years later, diesel made its American debut, first in GM's ill-fated Oldsmobile diesel V8s, and eventually in light-duty pickups and SUVs where the technology found its footing. Ford wouldn't put a diesel engine in an American passenger car again, but the concept lived on in a strange, indirect way through Lincoln's later obsession with quiet, smooth, fuel-efficient luxury. So the 1977 Lincoln Mark V diesel remains one of the strangest footnotes in Detroit history, a bizarre, unlikely collision of French efficiency and American excess. A car that shouldn't have worked, and by most accounts didn't. But for one fleeting moment, the most indulgent American luxury coupe ever built rolled down a Michigan test track powered not by gas, but by a whispering cloud of diesel fumes and foreign ambition. And then it vanished, just like the mileage sticker that never was. Now this is the kind of story whispered among the most obsessive gearheads, shared in hushed tones at car shows, or buried deep in dusty archives. You've heard of the Avanti R1. You may have even seen an R2 or, if you're lucky, read about the fabled R3s, hand-tuned monsters with engineering signed off by Andy Granatelli himself. But hidden behind all that official legacy, shrouded in myth and denial, is something far more unhinged. A unicorn. A ghost. The 1964 Studebaker Avanti R4 twin supercharged. A machine so radical, so dangerous, so thoroughly off the corporate rails that Studebaker buried it faster than they built it. The standard Avanti was already a marvel. Designed by Raymond Loewy, with its jet-age styling and aircraft-inspired cockpit, it was Studebaker's last-ditch effort to recapture American hearts and establish themselves as a serious performance contender. And with the R-Series engine program, they almost pulled it off. The R2 Avanti, with its Paxton supercharger, was capable of 140-plus mph, nearly unheard of for an American coupe in 1963. The R3? Fewer than 10 were built, but they took things even further with hand-ported heads and larger internals. But then came the R4, a name that doesn't appear in any official brochure, service manual, or VIN registry. According to persistent legend and one half-burned memo leaked from Studebaker's South Bend archives in the 1980s, there was one Avanti built as an uncompromising test platform. It wasn't designed to sell. It wasn't meant to survive. It was built purely to prove a point. This R4 was fitted with a dual Paxton centrifugal supercharger setup, each mounted on opposite sides of the heavily reinforced 304.5 cubic inch V8. The engine was bored and stroked to nearly 315 cubes, fitted with custom-forged high-compression pistons, solid lifters, a wild camshaft, and race-spec headers dumping into a straight-pipe exhaust. The dual superchargers fed into a custom plenum intake manifold, hand-welded in-house, that split boost equally across the engine's banks. Boost pressure? Rumored to be over 15 psi per blower, meaning the thing was inhaling air like a wind tunnel on fire. There was no intercooling, no computer controls, just raw, violent mechanical force, managed by a reinforced Borg-Warner T10 gearbox and a Dana 44 rear axle barely holding on for dear life. Cooling was an afterthought. A triple-core aluminum radiator was hastily mounted up front, with twin electric fans wired in behind toggle switches hidden under the dash. They called it the Blue Ghost, allegedly painted in a matte sky blue primer to keep attention low during desert testing. And that's where the car met its brief, unforgettable fate. El Mirage Dry Lake, California, 1964. It was a closed test, no cameras, no press, just engineers and a man brave enough, or insane enough, to grip the wheel of the most overbuilt Studebaker in existence. They say it screamed across the lake bed like a missile, spinning the rear tires even in fourth gear. The front end floated at speed, the car practically levitating over the cracked desert floor. It was clocked, unofficially, at 173 miles per hour, and still pulling when suddenly everything went wrong. The cooling system gave out, a burst radiator hose, a warped head. Steam everywhere, the engine locked up mid-run. The driver coasted it to a stop in a haze of heat, silence, and disbelief. Back at South Bend, the reaction wasn't excitement. It was panic. Studebaker was already crumbling in 1964, losing money, closing plants, desperately trying to pivot to Canadian assembly. A fire-breathing twin supercharged missile of a car was not only unmarketable, it was dangerous. The insurance implications, the legal risks, the sheer cost of even admitting such a machine existed were too high. So they shut it down. Hard. The prototype was stripped in silence, the motor dismantled, the body crushed. The test data was boxed, sealed, and allegedly buried in the now-demolished engineering building's sub-basement. When Avanti Motors took over a few years later, even they never found reference to it. Only a single internal memo surfaced decades later during a private archive sale, a yellowing sheet with partial specs, a scribbled R4 dual PX notation, and the words, "Terminate immediately," too unstable for public release. And that was that. No photographs, no VIN, no official record. But the legend lives, among old engineers who don't recall anything, among dry lake racers who remember seeing a blur of blue, and among the faithful who believe that, for one brief moment, Studebaker built a car capable of shaming anything Detroit or Europe dared to produce. The Avanti R4 twin supercharged wasn't a production model. It was a challenge, a weapon, and a secret Studebaker took to its grave. Now, this is one of those shadows of the shadow projects, a weaponized sleeper that never officially existed, designed not for consumers but for the kind of government agents who rarely show a badge and never leave paperwork. Meet the 1991 Chevrolet Caprice 9.7 prototype. A car born in secrecy built for one purpose, unrelenting high-speed pursuit at a level no squad car had ever attempted. It wore no spoilers, no flashy wheels, no menacing hood scoop, just the understated blandness of a base-model bubble Caprice, hiding a Corvette heart. In the early 1990s, General Motors was quietly facing increasing pressure from federal law enforcement, particularly the FBI and U.S. Marshals Service, to develop a true high-speed pursuit vehicle. The standard 9C1 Caprice was a decent performer with its L05 350 cubic inch TBI V8, but it struggled against tuned European imports or heavily modified domestic threats on the open road. The government needed something stealthy, unassuming, and brutally fast. GM's solution? Take the outgoing C4 Corvette's LT1 V8. Then in pre-production for the 92 Vet, and stuff it into a full-size sedan with the kind of handling and stopping power normally reserved for sports cars. Internally dubbed the 9C7, this prototype was a Frankenstein born in the skunkworks of GM's Special Vehicle Engineering Division. One prototype was known to have been completed, painted dull white with black steel wheels, black wall tires, and absolutely zero exterior badges. It looked like any other municipal fleet car. Under the hood, however, it was a monster. The LT1 5.7L V8, with aluminum heads, 4 bolt mains, and a factory-rated 300 horsepower, was bolted to a Borg-Warner T56 6-speed manual transmission. Likely borrowed straight from early ZFU-sourced Corvette or Camaro development parts bins. But the powertrain was just the beginning. Engineers upgraded the Caprice with ZR1 Corvette disc brakes, specially adapted to the B-body's geometry. The suspension was lowered and stiffened with heavier sway bars and police-calibrated shocks, while the drive shaft was custom fabricated with reinforced U-joints to handle the LT1's torque under brutal throttle. An oil cooler, transmission cooler, and dual electric fans were also fitted, and the cooling system was so overbuilt that testers reportedly left the engine idling for an hour in Phoenix heat without the temperature gauge moving past halfway. Inside, the 9C7 remained stripped down. Vinyl bench, column shifter. Retained but disabled, a visual decoy, heavy-duty rubber floor mats, basic analog gauges, and hidden kill switches under the dash for ignition and fuel cutoff. A small toggle panel mounted above the glove box controlled auxiliary lights and a built-in scanner system. It was designed for agents, not cops. A mobile surveillance and pursuit vehicle, not a highway cruiser. During testing in Arizona and Nevada in late 1991, The 9C7 prototype reportedly hit 154 mph on a closed section of highway, verified by Chase Aircraft. It accelerated from 0 to 60 in under 6 seconds despite its 4,000-plus pound curb weight, and test drivers claimed it could outbrake and outmaneuver not just every police vehicle on the market, but most civilian sedans as well. One internal memo later uncovered in a retired GM engineer's files described it as the fastest production-bodied vehicle we've ever tested with 4 doors. So what happened? Cost? Politics? Fear? The car was simply too expensive to build in quantity and too non-standardized for fleet maintenance. A manual transmission in a full-size sedan was an operational nightmare. No department wanted to retrain drivers, and insurance underwriters reportedly balked at the performance specs. GM's own brass got cold feet over the idea of a federal-only pursuit car that vastly outperformed civilian offerings. Internally, they feared the optics, that the government was getting special versions the public couldn't have, especially in the wake of the late 80s surveillance state paranoia and mounting lawsuits over police chases. By early 1992, the 9C7 was quietly mothballed. One unit allegedly remained in testing with a federal agency. Most believe it went to an FBI field office in Virginia for highway interdiction experiments under the radar. After 1993, its trail goes cold. No VIN was ever made public. The engine, however, or one almost certainly from that build, was discovered in 1998 in a Detroit junkyard, tagged with prototype casting numbers and a hand-stamped serial plate reading SVE 9C7A1. The T56 and associated sensors had long since been removed, likely scrapped or reused in early F-body Camaro development. The legend of the 9C7 faded into obscurity. Years later, when the 1994 Impala SA arrived, lowered, blacked out, LT1-powered, automatic only, many suspected it was a spiritual successor. But insiders knew better. The Impala SS was a hot rod cruiser. The 1968 Plymouth Roadrunner Hurst Experimental is one of those rare, almost mythical muscle cars that live on the fringes of automotive history, hidden in shadows, whispered about in garages, and surrounded by a haze of mystery and legend. It wasn't just a car, it was a rebellious experiment, the product of an unholy alliance between Chrysler and Hurst Performance that dared to break every rule muscle car fans thought they knew. This was a machine born in the fever pitch of the 1960s muscle car wars, a time when Detroit was locked in a fierce battle to build the fastest, meanest, most fearsome street and strip machines on the planet. And this Roadrunner? It was the ace up Chrysler's sleeve, secret, savage, and utterly unstoppable. Hurst Performance by the late 1960s was more than just a maker of iconic shifters. It was an engineering powerhouse with a reputation for pushing muscle cars beyond factory limits, combining race-bred innovation with street-savvy modifications. Chrysler, seeing an opportunity to leverage that expertise, allowed Hurst's elite engineers to take one of their most beloved muscle cars, the Roadrunner, and tear it down to its core, then rebuild it as a radical prototype like no other. This wasn't just another option on a dealer lot. The 1968 Roadrunner Hurst Experimental was a one-off creation with a mission to dominate both on the street and the drag strip, proving that pure muscle could be engineered for ruthless performance. The car's frame was heavily reinforced with custom bracing and gussets to withstand the brutal torque and insane horsepower that Hurst's engineers planned to unleash. Weight saving was crucial too, so the entire front clip, including the fenders and hood, was replaced with fiberglass parts, cutting down hundreds of pounds and improving the car's balance and aerodynamics. Under the hood, the real heart of the beast throbbed with power, a wild and experimental 440+6 V8 engine. This was no factory-standard 440 cubic inch motor. Hurst took the legendary Chrysler Big Block and pushed it way past the factory's comfort zone. This engine featured aggressive camshaft profiles, radical porting on the heads, and a unique 6-barrel carburetor setup that was almost unheard of on street cars. The power output was estimated to be somewhere near or above 450 horsepower, an astronomical figure in 1968 for a car barely tipping the scales at 3,500 pounds. The engine was raw, ferocious, and delivered a brutal surge of torque that made the car leap forward with terrifying force. Inside, all the creature comforts were stripped away. The interior was reduced to bare metal panels and minimalist racing seats. Every ounce of excess weight was banished, replaced by purpose-built racing gauges and controls wired for performance rather than comfort. This was a driver's machine. No distractions, no compromises, just pure adrenaline and unfiltered connection between man and machine. The car made its brief and secretive public appearance at the 1968 NHRA Winter Nationals, shown only in private to a select group of insiders, racers, and journalists. It was never intended for mass production or showroom sales. Instead, it was a statement, a prototype designed to demonstrate what Hurst and Chrysler could achieve when rules and budgets were tossed aside. What happened after that is where the story gets even murkier. The Roadrunner. Hurst Experimental disappeared almost as quickly as it arrived. Officially, Chrysler never spoke of it again. Rumors and whispers suggest the car was sold discreetly to a private drag racer under the table, somewhere far from the prying eyes of the automotive press and regulators. According to some enthusiasts and collectors, this legendary bird of prey may still be alive today, lurking somewhere in the Southwest, heavily modified and tuned over decades of hard racing and street use. Its fiberglass nose battered, its engine rebuilt countless times, but its raw spirit forever intact. It's a ghost story told by muscle car enthusiasts, a reminder of a brief moment when Detroit's muscle wars produced not just factory specials, but genuine outlaw machines built in backrooms and barns, far from the polished showrooms. The Roadrunner. Hurst Experimental embodies the raw, reckless spirit of the muscle car era, when innovation often thrived in secret, and when the quest for speed meant taking risks that would get you banned from dealers, or worse, erased from history. Today, the bird of prey remains one of the most elusive and fascinating chapters in muscle car history, a symbol of what might have been if Chrysler had embraced the wild vision of Hurst performance, instead of retreating to safer, more conventional ground. It's a car that challenges us to imagine the raw power and unrelenting fury that lurked beneath the surface of the muscle car golden age. A legend that refuses to die, hidden somewhere just beyond reach, waiting for the day it might roar back to life. The 1984 Pontiac Fiero Indy pace car, turbo prototype, is one of the most fascinating what-if stories in American automotive history. A glimpse into a world where Pontiac dared to push the boundaries of its quirky mid-engine commuter coupe into genuine performance territory, only to have that dream abruptly snatched away by cautious corporate hands. On the surface, the 1984 Fiero Indy pace car that the public saw was a charming, if somewhat underpowered little coupe wearing a flashy race-inspired paint scheme. It looked like a car ready to lead the pack around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but under the hood, it was still the same 92 horsepower 2.5-liter V6 that left enthusiasts scratching their heads. For the general public, the Fiero was a neat commuter car dressed in race day finery, cool on the outside, but hardly a contender. But behind the scenes, Pontiac engineers and designers were cooking up something far more ambitious and radical. In the shadows of GM's sprawling corporate structure, they built a secret prototype for the Indy 500 pace car program, a version of the Fiero that tore down the limits of what this little coupe could be. This Fiero had a turbocharged 2.5-liter V6 delivering over 200 horsepower, more than double the power of the base model. It had beefed-up suspension components, improved brakes, and a reworked chassis designed to handle the higher speeds and stresses of the racetrack. This was a mid-engine, turbocharged fireball that turned the mild-mannered commuter into a serious performance machine, one that could hold its own against many sportier and more expensive cars of the era. The contrast between the public pace car and the prototype was staggering, almost a study in what could have been. The Turbo Fiero was faster, sharper, and so much more exciting. It was a car that hinted at a future where the Fiero wasn't just a quirky experiment in plastic body design but a genuine sports car capable of thrilling drivers. Enthusiasts clamored for a production version of this turbocharged marvel. Pontiac itself seemed ready to make the leap, but the dream was cut brutally short. GM executives, wary of the Fiero's reputation as a quirky commuter and concerned about cost, reliability, and safety issues, intervened. Testing revealed serious stability problems at high speeds, with the suspension geometry causing unpredictable handling traits. The car was prone to snap oversteer, a terrifying trait at track speeds. Combined with GM's notoriously conservative corporate culture and the Fiero's modest sales, the decision was made to kill the Turbo Fiero before it ever reached production. The few prototypes built were quietly shelved, and the turbocharged pace car idea was reduced to a footnote in Pontiac's history. The project was never officially acknowledged, and Pontiac quickly pushed the 92-horsepower commuter pace car as the face of its Indy 500 involvement, leaving the turbocharged wonder hidden away. The engineers involved were told to keep quiet, and any further development was shut down indefinitely. The Turbo Fiero became a ghost car, whispered about in enthusiast circles, sought after by collectors, but shrouded in mystery. Only a handful of prototypes were ever built, and none survived publicly, disappearing into the vaults of GM's secret archives or private collections. Today, the 1984 Pontiac Fiero Indy pace car turbo prototype remains a tantalizing what might have been. A car that could have transformed Pontiac's image, injected real performance into an unlikely platform, and carved out a unique place in muscle and sports car history. It's a reminder of the tension between innovation and corporate caution, of the dreams crushed by boardroom decisions, and of a small, plastic-bodied coupe that, for a brief moment, almost flew like a true performance machine. The Turbo Fiero's story is a cautionary tale, a glimpse of hidden potential lost to time, and a symbol of Pontiac's forgotten boldness that fans still celebrate decades later. The 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona is not just a muscle car, it's a legend wrapped in controversy, speed, and secrecy. Picture this: a sleek, aerodynamic missile on wheels, built specifically to conquer the grueling high-speed battles of NASCAR's superspeedways. Dodge engineers took the already ferocious Charger and transformed it into a rocket ship for the street and the track alike. The massive pointed nose cone was unlike anything seen on American cars before, slicing through the air with the precision of a jet fighter. And that absurdly huge 23-inch rear wing? It wasn't just for show. It was engineered to provide unprecedented downforce at speeds over 200 miles per hour, keeping this beast glued to the asphalt like a race car from the future. In 1969, this wasn't just muscle. It was raw, untamed power combined with cutting-edge aerodynamic science. The Daytona smashed records, leaving competitors in the dust as it reached mind-blowing speeds previously unheard of in NASCAR. It was designed to dominate, and dominate it did. But here's where the story takes a dark turn. The Charger. Daytona was so good at what it did that NASCAR grew worried. Its radical design gave Dodge an overwhelming advantage that others simply couldn't match without spending fortunes on their own aero warriors. In 1971, NASCAR banned the very design features that made the Daytona legendary. The nose cone and the rear wing were outlawed, effectively making these aerodynamic beasts illegal for racing. Dodge, faced with this sudden rule change and the expensive implications of redesigning or retreating, pulled the plug on the Daytona program. What was once the fastest, most dominant car on the track suddenly became a pariah. Dealers were left holding these street-legal homologation models that had to be sold to the public to qualify for NASCAR, but with racing banned, they were practically shoved out the door. Unwanted and misunderstood. Dodge's corporate lips sealed tight. The Daytona was barely mentioned in brochures or press releases, a source of quiet frustration and perhaps embarrassment for a company that had poured passion and innovation into it. Today, fewer than 500 street versions are believed to survive, making the Charger Daytona one of the rarest and most coveted muscle cars in history. Its reputation is legendary, a car that, for a brief shining moment, redefined what a muscle car could be, a perfect blend of brute force and aerodynamic wizardry. Owners and collectors often speak with a mix of awe and reverence, knowing they hold a piece of forbidden history. The Charger. Daytona is more than just a car. It's a symbol of what happens when engineering genius runs headlong into the cold reality of corporate politics and racing regulations. It remains a potent reminder of a time when muscle cars weren't just about horsepower, they were missiles launched to break limits, a testament to ambition that was too powerful for its own good. The story of the Dodge Charger Daytona is a thrilling cautionary tale. It's about innovation pushing the envelope, about rules bending under the weight of pure speed, and about a muscle car that was so good it was almost too dangerous to exist. This car didn't just race, it flew, it dominated, and then it was banished. And that's exactly what makes it unforgettable. The 1978 Chevrolet Monza Mirage twin-rotor is more than just an obscure prototype. It's a symbol of ambition, innovation, and the harsh realities that can crush the boldest dreams in the automotive world. To truly understand the magnitude of this machine, you have to imagine the late 1970s automotive landscape. The muscle car heyday was fading fast under the weight of soaring gas prices, mounting government emissions regulations, and a consumer market shifting toward practicality and fuel efficiency. Yet, amidst this challenging backdrop, a select group of GM engineers dared to dream wildly. They envisioned a car that could blend the sporty, nimble charm of the Monza Mirage with a powertrain that wasn't just different, but revolutionary. A twin-rotor Wankel rotary engine that promised high-revving thrills and a sonic signature unlike anything else on the road. This rotary engine was a radical departure from the familiar pushrods and V8s dominating American streets. The Wankel design, originally developed in Germany, used a rotating triangular rotor inside an oval housing instead of pistons, creating a smaller, lighter engine that could rev higher and deliver smooth, linear power. GM's engineers pushed this concept further with a twin-rotor configuration, effectively doubling the engine's potential displacement and performance, giving the Monza Mirage an edge that was both unheard of and incredibly exciting. The combination of the car's lightweight chassis and the rotary's rapid revving capability resulted in a machine that reportedly blasted to 60 mph in under 7 seconds, a figure that, for 1978, was jaw-dropping and competitive with some of the fastest European sports cars of the era. But beneath the surface of this promising technological marvel lay an uphill battle against reality. The rotary engine's insatiable thirst for fuel and its complex emissions challenges put it squarely at odds with the tightening environmental laws coming into force across the United States. Furthermore, rotary engines were known for their high oil consumption, potential durability issues, and difficult maintenance, problems that didn't sit well with GM's cautious corporate leadership, which was already nervous about economic downturns and wary of risky investments. The novelty of the rotary's futuristic sound and its compact size was overshadowed by the very real concerns of fuel economy, production costs, and long-term reliability. Internal politics and cost considerations quickly suffocated the program. The once promising twin-rotor Monza Mirage project was abruptly canceled, and GM's executives ordered the prototype's rotary engine destroyed to prevent any unauthorized continuation of the work. The Monza Mirage itself, stripped of its heart and soul, was relegated to obscurity, forgotten in storage, lost within the sprawling network of GM's archives, its groundbreaking potential buried beneath layers of corporate caution and market pragmatism. What adds to the mystique is how little information has ever escaped the walls of GM. Unlike some other experimental vehicles, the Monza Mirage twin-rotor has no official public debut, no press release, no sales brochures. It is almost a phantom, whispered about only in the corners of enthusiast circles and rare interviews with former engineers. Rumors persist that the car's chassis survives somewhere in private hands or a hidden collection, a silent monument to a daring but doomed engineering dream. This story of the 1978 Chevrolet Monza Mirage twin-rotor isn't just about a car. It's a narrative about the collision between visionary engineering and cold corporate realities. It represents the perpetual tension in the automotive world, the struggle between pushing technological boundaries and conforming to market forces and regulations. It's a story of what might have been, a haunting what if, that leaves enthusiasts longing for a glimpse of that elusive future when American cars could have embraced the rotary's promise of performance and innovation. In the end, the Monza Mirage twin-rotor remains a ghostly icon, a testament to the creativity and daring of the engineers who believed in a different path. It's a symbol of lost potential, a hidden chapter in the history of GM that could have rewritten the rules of American muscle and sports cars. And while it never saw the bright lights of production or the roar of public acclaim, its legacy endures in the imaginations of gearheads, historians, and dreamers who continue to wonder, What if Chevrolet had embraced the rotary engine and changed the course of automotive history forever? The 1995 Oldsmobile Aurora GTS is one of the most fascinating and underappreciated what-could-have-been stories in modern American automotive history. This was not just another trim level or a subtle styling package slapped on a luxury sedan. It was a bold experiment, a secret weapon born from a group of engineers and enthusiasts within Oldsmobile who desperately wanted to revive the brand's image and push the boundaries of what American luxury performance could be in the mid-1990s. At a time when Oldsmobile was struggling with its identity, trying to balance between traditional American comfort and the increasingly popular European-style sporty sedans, the Aurora was already a step in the right direction. With its sleek, modern design and smooth, reliable Northstar V8, it had the potential to compete in the upscale market. But the stock Aurora, with its automatic transmissions and fairly soft suspension tuning, didn't capture the attention of hardcore enthusiasts who craved real performance, precision handling, and the kind of visceral connection to the road that European rivals like BMW and Audi had mastered. Enter the Aurora GTS, a clandestine project that reimagined the sedan as a genuine driver's car. This prototype was powered by a significantly upgraded Northstar V8 engine, hand-tuned to deliver over 300 horsepower, a remarkable figure for a front-engine, front-wheel drive sedan of its time. But more than raw power, the GTS was special because it featured a rare 6-speed manual transmission, a feature almost unheard of in American luxury sedans then. This manual gearbox wasn't just a gimmick. It was designed for drivers who demanded engagement, precision, and control, a statement that Oldsmobile could build something worthy of respect from serious enthusiasts. Visually, the Aurora GTS was striking, sporting an aggressive yet tasteful body kit, enhanced aerodynamic elements, and a unique crimson metallic paint job that shimmered under sunlight. The 4 polished exhaust tips hinted at the muscle lurking beneath the hood, while subtle badges and trim cues set it apart from its more sedate siblings. Inside, the cabin was tuned for driver focus. Sports seats, upgraded suspension components, and a stiffer chassis made this prototype feel alive in a way few American sedans did. The goal of the Aurora GTS was clear: to challenge the dominance of European sports sedans on their own turf by offering a uniquely American take on performance and luxury. Oldsmobile's engineers envisioned this car as the future, a flagship that could restore prestige and excitement to a brand increasingly seen as outdated and uninspiring. They believed that with the right marketing push and production investment, the Aurora GTS could capture the hearts of enthusiasts and younger buyers, revitalizing Oldsmobile's fortunes and setting a new benchmark for American sedans. Unfortunately, the project fell victim to the brutal realities of corporate politics and shifting priorities within General Motors. Despite promising test drives and positive internal feedback, the Aurora GTS was deemed too risky and costly. GM executives feared the high development costs, the niche market for a manual luxury sedan, and the possibility of alienating Oldsmobile's traditional buyers. Without official approval, the prototype was quietly shelved and eventually dismantled. Internal documents were locked away, and the few engineers who worked on the GTS were told to never discuss it publicly. The program was effectively erased. What makes the Aurora GTS story even more compelling is the tantalizing rumor that its advanced Northstar V8 engine didn't die quietly. Some former insiders hint that this potent power plant found a second life in a Bonneville SSC speed record attempt car, where it was pushed to its limits in the quest for American speed glory. If true, it means that even though the Aurora GTS never made it to the showroom, its heart beat on in another legendary, if underground, chapter of American automotive performance. Today, the 1995 Oldsmobile Aurora GTS exists mostly as a legend. Ghost photos, whispered tales, and faded memories among car enthusiasts and former GM engineers. It stands as a symbol of what could have been. An American luxury performance sedan that dared to challenge European supremacy, that combined brutal V8 power with precision handling and a manual transmission, and that might have saved a struggling brand from oblivion. Instead, it remains a hidden, almost mythical piece of automotive history, reminding us how close the industry has come to changing direction, only to be pulled back by caution and convention. The Aurora GTS is a testament to ambition and innovation, but also a stark reminder of how fragile progress can be in a world driven by corporate decisions and market conservatism. For those who know its story, it's a bittersweet emblem of lost potential and the enduring dream that one day American cars might own. The 1961 Chrysler 300F was already a landmark in American automotive performance, an apex predator of the early muscle car era. With its massive 413 cubic inch Hemi V8 pumping out a solid 375 horsepower, the 300F was an engineering marvel, featuring the revolutionary long-ram cross-ram intake manifold that helped boost airflow and torque at higher RPMs. Its sleek, jet-inspired design and racing pedigree made it a legend on the streets and the Strip. Yet, beneath the surface, Chrysler's engineers were quietly pushing boundaries even further, working on a secret prototype so radical and powerful that it was never intended for public eyes. This was the enigmatic 300F cross-ram Daytona mule. Behind closed doors, a select group of Chrysler's top performance engineers, an informal but fiercely determined crew nicknamed the Fast Five, set out to shatter speed barriers and rewrite what a muscle car could do. Their goal was to take the already legendary 300F and transform it into a true speed demon capable of dominating the high-speed runs at Daytona Beach, a proving ground steeped in speed lore and the birthplace of many American automotive legends. The key to this transformation was a wildly aggressive modification to the already innovative long-tube cross-ram intake manifold. The Fast Five designed and installed a vertical stack intake system, a setup more commonly found in race cars than production vehicles, allowing the engine to breathe at levels previously thought impossible for a street-based V8. Coupled with a specially ground camshaft optimized for screaming high RPMs, the 300F's Hemi was tuned to unleash a brutal wave of power and torque in the upper rev range, a performance envelope Chrysler's engineers had only begun to explore. In early 1961, far from the public eye and media scrutiny, the 300F cross-ram Daytona mule was taken to the sands of Daytona Beach for testing. The environment was perfect, a long, flat stretch of hard-packed sand, the ultimate natural speedway. The prototype was strapped down and pushed hard by skilled test drivers and engineers, their aim to break the 160 mph barrier that few American cars had dared to approach at the time. Witnesses, mostly engineers and select insiders, later recalled the car screaming down the sands with a ferocity that was almost otherworldly. The engine's howl echoed across the beach as the speedometer climbed, and for a brief moment, the 300F cross-ram Daytona mule made history, shattering previous records and proving the concept that Chrysler could build a muscle car faster than nearly anything on the road or strip. However, this rocket ship was not without its flaws. At the peak of its run, the extreme tuning pushed the engine beyond mechanical limits. The valves began to float, failing to close properly at the high RPMs necessary to sustain top speed, causing a dramatic and dangerous engine condition that abruptly ended the test run. The engineers, while exhilarated by the power, knew this was a fragile beast that required more refinement than the corporate budget or priorities would allow. Behind the scenes, the project met a chilling fate. Chrysler's upper management, wary of the costs, risks, and possible public relations backlash of promoting a car that was on the edge of mechanical disaster, ordered the project shut down. The single prototype was quietly ordered to be destroyed, the engineering documents locked away, and all traces of the program erased from official records. The Fast Five were warned not to speak publicly of their creation, turning the 300F cross-ram Daytona mule into a near-mythical figure among insiders and collectors. For decades, the story of the 300F cross-ram Daytona mule survived only as whispered legend, part performance dream, part cautionary tale of what happens when innovation clashes with corporate caution. Only a few rare, grainy photos leaked out, showing the car's distinctive vertical stacks rising from the hood, a visual testament to its radical engineering. Enthusiasts and historians pored over faded documents and oral histories, piecing together the tale of Chrysler's lost rocket car. Today, the 1961 Chrysler 300F cross-ram Daytona mule stands as a symbol of raw ambition and the relentless pursuit of speed, a ghost from an era when American muscle was just beginning to find its voice. It embodies the tension between daring engineering and the constraints of business realities. Though it never reached production, never raced on the streets or tracks for the public, its spirit endures as a reminder that behind every muscle car legend lies a hidden story of innovation, risk, and the sometimes tragic cost of pushing too hard, too fast, too soon. This car wasn't just a prototype. It was a glimpse into a road not taken, a testament to the untamed passion that drove an era, and a monument to the eternal dream of speed that still fires the hearts of muscle car enthusiasts today. The 1989 AMC Eagle SX4 Turbo 4x4 rally concept is one of those rare automotive legends wrapped in layers of secrecy, passion, and unrealized potential, a shining beacon of what might have been during the twilight years of American Motors Corporation. By 1989, AMC was fighting for survival, having been swallowed up by Chrysler, a corporate giant focused on consolidating its brands and streamlining its priorities. But deep within AMC's engineering division, a small group of die-hard engineers refused to let the Eagle name die quietly. These were the rebels and visionaries who dreamed of transforming the humble Eagle SX4 into something extraordinary. A rally car built to challenge the supremacy of Europe's finest all-wheel drive beasts, like the iconic Audi Quattro. This was no simple facelift or cosmetic tweak. The Eagle SX4 Turbo 4x4 was a complete reimagination, a battle-ready machine forged for the brutal demands of rally racing. At its heart beat a turbocharged Jeep 2.5-liter inline-4 engine, tuned far beyond its stock output to deliver exhilarating power with the kind of turbo spool and throttle response that could tear through twisty mountain passes or loose gravel roads with ferocity. Paired with a crisp 5-speed manual gearbox, this power plant was engineered to put every drop of torque to the ground efficiently through a full-time all-wheel drive system specifically adapted for rally dynamics, ensuring grip and balance that could rival the best European imports. Visually, the SX4 Turbo 4x4 screamed performance and capability. It wore a purposeful suit of flared fenders, designed to swallow wider rally-spec tires, while additional rally lights adorned the front, ready to illuminate dark forest stages and foggy dawns. Inside, the cabin was stripped down and race-ready, featuring lightweight Recaro bucket seats to hold driver and co-driver firmly in place during bone-jarring runs over rough terrain. This was a car built to compete, to push limits, and to bring American ingenuity onto the global rally stage. What makes the story even more captivating is the sheer audacity of AMC engineers to create such a machine at a time when the company's future was deeply uncertain. With Chrysler's acquisition looming and corporate strategies shifting, this project was not officially sanctioned or publicly announced. Instead, it was a skunkworks effort, a labor of love driven by passion, technical skill, and a desire to preserve AMC's racing heritage and relevance. The SX4 Turbo 4x4 was AMC's answer to the Audi Quattro, the game-changing all-wheel drive turbocharged car that had redefined rally racing and inspired an entire generation of performance cars. But the corporate reality was harsh. When Chrysler executives finally saw the prototype, the reaction was swift and cold. Rather than embracing a potential new halo car or a rival to European dominance in rally, Chrysler viewed the Eagle SX4 Turbo 4x4 as a threat, one that could cannibalize the brand identity and sales of Jeep, their prized off-road and all-wheel drive division. The internal politics of brand management, combined with risk aversion in a competitive market, meant that the SX4 project was abruptly shut down. Development was halted, prototypes were shelved, and all traces of the car's existence were swept under the rug. For years, the prototype was rumored to have been locked away in a Chrysler warehouse, gathering dust and fading from memory. According to some whispers from former engineers and insiders, the car eventually left corporate hands, sold quietly to one of the very engineers who had worked on the project, a custodian intent on preserving the last breath of AMC's innovative spirit. However, no official documentation, photos, or public sightings have surfaced to confirm the car's fate. The SX4 Turbo 4x4 remains one of the great automotive mysteries, a lost relic whose story is told in hushed tones and speculative conversations among enthusiasts and historians. This car symbolizes much more than just an unrealized rally machine. It represents the relentless drive of engineers fighting against the odds, the persistence of a company struggling for survival, and the tension between innovation and corporate pragmatism. The 1989 AMC Eagle SX4 Turbo 4x4 rally concept captures a fleeting moment when American automakers dared to dream of competing head-on with the best the world had to offer in motorsports, when a small team believed that passion, grit, and clever engineering could rewrite the rules. Today, the SX4 Turbo 4x4 lives on as a legend, a whispered secret in the halls of automotive history and a symbol of what might have been if AMC's spirit had been given the freedom and resources to thrive. It stands as a testament to the ingenuity buried beneath the surface of corporate takeovers and brand politics, a shining example of American grit and innovation that still inspires collectors, engineers,